Okay, welcome everybody to Saratoga Whiskey Club tasting number 118.
Oh,
We keep moving along here. Year 7 of the club, 6 or 7, I can't even think now. But we are doing a really fun tasting tonight, kind of a new one for us. We've never actually done a theme like this. And the whole point of tonight's tasting is to kind of learn about the effects of copper and how does that translate into whiskey, and with the different flavors and the different kind of oiliness, everything that you get that comes from copper. So we do have a scorecard online. So those people who are on Zoom, if you could score, and we do have scorecards here. If you guys want to do that, you're welcome to do that. Don't feel pressure. I know we have some new people who've probably never done that before. And all right, hold on one sec. I'm just pulling up one last document here. So here, hold on one second. I just closed the shop, so I'm trying to catch up here. And Holly is in Tennessee visiting distilleries today, so she's not going to be joining us. She's driving all over the state. She was out at Kings County, or Kings Family today, and did a barrel pick yesterday up at New Riff. So some good stuff coming. But all right, so tonight we're going to focus on copper. We have 6 single malt scotches that I picked. 2 of them are from the Scotch Malt Whiskey Society, very special bottles. And then the other 4 actually picked up here in the store. I was trying to think of this tasting for a while. It was a little kind of over my head, and I talked to Holly about it, and she kind of honed in a little bit because she knows like science and distilling better than anybody I know, even some of the people that work at distilleries. So she's very good at kind of figuring out what would work well together. But we're going to be starting off with, it's kind of a contrast tasting. The first 2 whiskeys that we're going to taste tonight are from Auchentoshan, which is in the, well, it's right near Glasgow. It's kind of on the line of where the Highlands begin and where the Lowlands begins, kind of right just north of Glasgow. So it's considered a Highland, even though some people consider it a lowland because it's so far south. But we're going to start off with 2 very special whiskeys. They might actually be the most special whiskeys of the tasting. Sometimes I like to do that because our palates are fresh. You know, we aren't going through all of these cask strength whiskeys one after another, and then our palates are ruined and we're trying to taste the most special dram last. You know, we've done that before, and you know, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But tonight we're starting off with 2 very special whiskeys from Auchentoshan, and I'm going to play, that's the video I'm going to play. It's actually on their distillery. And what I want you guys to think about when you're tasting these first 2 whiskeys is it heavy? Is it oily? Is it fruity? You know, really kind of think of the consistency, the density of the whiskey. Think of like some of the fruit characteristics or malt characteristics that come out of whether it's the malt itself or the barrel. I'll talk about each of these bottles independently, but just kind of, you know, when you go into this tasting, take your time. You don't need to finish each dram as you go along. You can come back, go back and forth, nothing wrong with that. But I'm really trying to get like, what do you get from a body standpoint out of these first 2 whiskeys? You know, is it heavy, light, you know, just, and then we'll talk about it, and then we'll talk about maybe what some of the reasons are that it is the way it is. So I'm going to start with this video. You can start sipping the first whiskey. So we're starting off with a 22-year expression from Auchentoshan. This is 51.5%. This bottle or barrel or this whiskey was matured in a refill hogshead. As you can see by a lot of these drams that we're having tonight, they're very light in color, usually because it's either a bourbon barrel or a bourbon hogshead barrel, which this is the case. A hogshead is a little bit larger than a 53-gallon. They've added 50 liters by adding more staves. So this definitely is from a refill hogshead. So this is a barrel that's already had whiskey in it before. So this is a refill barrel or a second fill. First fill would be straight from Kentucky and with Scotch in it. This is actually the second time that whiskey has been put into this barrel. This is a single cask. There are only 257 bottles of this in the world. And it's pretty expensive, I think. I can't remember. It's up there. 285. 200 something. Yeah. So it's expensive. We're starting off with a very special bottle. But sip on that. I'm going to play this video. Hopefully it works. And I'm going to share my screen right now and get that set up. Of course. Ooh. Why is that there? Right, hold on. Stop the share. I'm going to move that over so I can actually access it. There we go. I'll share my screen again. Yeah. Yeah. And let me put the closed captions on too.
There's enough here. That's also
I don't know if you guys might have to get up to watch this, but wow, I'm doing this upside down.
Welcome to another distillery tour. Today we take you with us to Auchentoshan Distillery. The distillery is located in the lowlands, not far outside of Glasgow. At the distillery standard tour, which includes a visit to all the facilities and a small tasting in the end. The guide was quite nice and we were allowed to take pictures nearly everywhere at the distillery except for a small area in the warehouse. First of all, we had a look at the mash tuns, which were in production already. The mill was quite impressive, but not in production.
It was rich.
Also, the ingredients of whiskey were shown to us, although peat is not used for making Auchentoshan whiskey. On this picture, you can see the mashing process in its full beauty. After that, we went to see the washbacks where the fermentation is done. The fermentation at Auchentoshan Distillery can be quite long, up to 90 hours. It was very nice to see a lot of pictures during the distillery visit.
Right, so look at that.
Where the process was shown to us. Auchentoshan whiskey is the only triple distilled whiskey in Scotland. So here we have 3 stills. that were used for producing whiskey. Also, the different stages of the whiskey production were shown to us, as can be seen on the picture. This was the spirit safe where the whiskey was kept. After that, we went to the warehouse, which was a really nice place. You can also fill your own bottle in the warehouse, which is a nice occasion for real whiskey lovers.
All right, stop. I've had enough of you. How do I do this? Ah, I made it. All right.
Everyone's still awake.
Okay, and we can all put our bongs down now. We're back sharing screen. So I hope the German guy put you a little to sleep, but the main thing that I wanted you to see in that was a couple of things. One of them was he mentioned there's a long fermentation. So you want to think about that. 90 hours is pretty long. Typically you're looking at 72 hours or even 48 sometimes, but 90 is on the long side. They can go all the way up to 120 or so, but that's pretty rare. And 90 is considered long. And then they use wooden fermentation washbacks. They were, the old Oregon pine is usually what they use for those washbacks. But the biggest thing that I wanted you to see were the stills. If you were to look at those stills and didn't see a name or anything on them, you would think you were probably in Ireland somewhere. Ireland is known for triple distillation. Almost all the whiskey in Ireland is triple distilled, except for a few places like Waterford, where we've had some double distilled single malt. But typically, like when you think Redbreast and Jameson and everything, that we see mostly from Ireland, that all is triple distilled. And so coming back to that thought process and copper, basically what copper does is it cleans impurities. And I'm actually going to read, Holly wrote a nice blog post on copper and some of the things that copper does. So I'm going to read that real quick because she can write it much better than I can say it off the top of my head. But copper is so important to our whiskey production because of three main reasons. It's malleable. So this is needed to create the different shapes, the boil balls, the swan necks, etc., that make each distillery's spirit taste just a bit different and unique. And that is something when you go visit distilleries, it's a lot of fun just to look at how each of their stills are made differently. And that's really what gives them a difference in spirit. Copper is also a heat conductor. So you need copper kettles to boil up the wash and the low wines. And then it's super reactive. It helps eliminate sulfur compounds in the distillate. So when you have triple distillation, basically you're having an extra layer of distillation happening. So typically you have two with Scotland, you have two distillations, and then it gets condensed into the final product. In Auchentoshan, you have what it's called an intermediate still. So it's that middle still, which you see a lot in Ireland. And it turns out that Glasgow was a haven for Irish people at one point. And a lot of people moved from Ireland to Glasgow. And that's where Auchentoshan actually brought over some of their practices from some of the Irish influence that came to that area. There are other distilleries in Scotland that do more than double distillation. There's some of them that do like 2.5. And what they typically will do is they'll use that second or the spirit still to run it again, maybe just halfway. But basically, when you're triple distilling or engaging with that spirit 3 times, you are removing impurities. You are removing any kind of heaviness from that. And what Auchentoshan as well does is it doesn't let the spirit fall back into the spirit still that often. Most of it just continues straight out, has that copper contact. When it's condensed, it's in a shell and tube condenser, which basically, when you're thinking of the different types of condensing with whiskey, you have 2 types. You have a shell and tube condenser, and you have worm tubs. And worm tubs are going to be a big thing about what we're talking about today. But shell and tube, the way to think about it in different ways, a worm tub condenser is about as wide as a bear hug. So when you think of a copper tube, think about as wide a radius or diameter of a bear hug. And a shell and tube condenser, you're thinking about the width of a bottle. So you're thinking about just even the entry part of a bottle. So the spirit, when it gets condensed in a shell and tube condenser, is contacting a lot of copper. You know, it's being forced through a very small hole and very cold water that's going to condense it back into liquid. So there's a lot of copper contact. So Auchentoshan, not only are they triple distilling, but they're using a shell and tube condenser. So what does that mean in general? It means we should be drinking a much lighter spirit, much, not funky at all. It's going to be fruity and malty and easy to drink. Auchentoshan's known to be this kind of very classic taste profile. Oh, here we go. So the notes on this one, the nose, fresh vanilla pods with damp grass, freshly charred oak, and custard cream. The palate, home baking developing to barley sweetness and a delicate spiciness. The finish, deliciously long with coconut cream, eucalyptus, and cut grass. So, you know, you're getting a lot of these fresh notes. You know, you're thinking like fresh fruits and evergreens and all of that kind of thing. So what are you talking about, Luke and Beth Ann? I don't spare any expense for you.
On the expensive bottle, yeah.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, so this one's actually, I just looked, it's $229.99. So it's not $280 something, but still, it's up there.
It's oily, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't have even known to characterize it like that. Mentioned it.
Well,
I tasted, I could feel it, and before that, I wouldn't have known the words to use at all.
yeah, so exactly. The question is this oily or not? I mean, it definitely sticks to the glass, that's for sure.
Yeah.
You know, it has some viscosity to it. There is some oil in here, but at the same time, it's not going to be that heavy, rich oil that you will see as we go along into these last 4. What do you guys think of this one?
Spectacular.
Yeah, surprisingly light, fruity,
Yeah.
good mouthfeel to it. I mean, I'm getting that creaminess, that vanilla-ness. I was thinking white chocolate and strawberries more, but I get maybe the coconut notes. And,
Yeah, so strawberries,
yeah,
so a little bit, you know, coconut, obviously.
yeah, this is amazing.
Silky is a good word for this one.
I mean,
It is very,
I'm a fan.
that age, that 22 years gives this a really nice body.
Wood, the,
Um,
12, the blood oak with-
I'm going to save a little bit before I,
That's what this is all.
because I want to compare it to the next one that we're going to do. So try not to finish the first one, Frank.
Oh.
Gonna be tough. Sorry, Dan.
Yeah, I wonder where he is. He's usually pretty good about coming. Okay, all right, so this next one, pull up my notes here. So we've done some festival bottles with the Scotch Malt Whiskey Society in previous tastings. And this happens to be a festival bottle as well. I picked this up back in May, which is when they released their festival whiskeys. It's kind of funny, but on this bottle, it actually says in celebration of the Lowland Spirit or Lowland Whiskey 2022. So here we are just talking about, is this a Highland or a Lowland? Technically it's a Highland, but a lot of people still consider it a Lowland. A true Lowland would be like Glenkinchie and Bladnoch, and then some of the others that are definitely south of Glasgow or Edinburgh. However, Auchentoshan is actually northwest of Glasgow. So it really truly is a Highland, but Scotch Malt Whiskey Society calls it a Lowland. So that's interesting.
So did the German.
Yeah.
Charles, what you mentioned festival bottles. I'm not familiar with
Yeah,
that.
okay, good question. So in May, typically is the month when the festivals happen in Scotland. So there's at the beginning of May is the Spirit of Speyside Festival, which covers, that whole region. And then there actually is a Highlands Festival now. It's fairly new. I can't remember exactly when that is, but I think it's around the same time. And then towards the end of May, you have both the Campbelltown Whiskey Festival, and then you have the big festival on Islay, which is the Fagile. And so you have these 4 festivals, whiskey-focused festivals now across Scotland, mostly during May. And the Scotch Malt Whiskey Society decided to join in a few years ago and release festival bottles as well. So they have, a number of bottles that are focused on Islay, some that are Highlands, some that are Speyside. So we've done quite a few of those in our tastings, just kind of scattered throughout. But they also have these pretty labels when they do festival releases. So their normal label is just white. I'll show you the next bottle. It's just white, but they do like fun drawings and stuff. This one's called Around the Clock. This is an 18-year Auchentoshan. This is 55.8, so we have gone up a little bit in ABV. But let me read you a little bit about this whiskey. This actually came in a 700 milliliter bottle, which is interesting. Normally Scotch Malt Whiskey Society is 750s. So maybe they're going to start doing that, or at least with their festival bottles. But here's the description of this. It is, all they say is first fill barrels. I'm assuming that's bourbon. It looks like bourbon. But here, let me read the notes. They're always fun. A wonderful melange of aromas greeted the panel with fresh spring grass, flowering lilies, honeysuckle, melon, and mango, as well as buttered toast, sultanas, banana chips, and golden syrup. On the palate, neat, a sweet, juicy, tropical fruit juice with coconut water at first appeared, to be followed by a peppery ginger spice note before ending in a delicious lime and thyme cake. After reduction, and reduction means adding water, and we do have water droppers here. And if you want to add a little water at some point, go for it. After reduction, we hung freshly washed linen on the line in a flowery meadow before we enjoyed banana bread, buttered oat cakes, cantaloupe melon, and to drink, while some had wheat beer, others chose a peppermint tea before we all finished with a dessert wine. There you go. Scotch Malt Whiskey Society for you. So the creator of this bottle or this barrel pick is Ewan Campbell. He's famous Scotch whiskey gentleman. I don't remember all of his history, but he wrote a little thing. He said, "This has everything you would expect of an elegant, older lowland whiskey. In this case, it's triple distilled with narrow cut points and matured in active bourbon wood to bring a classic and delicious, sweet, fruity, and mellow flavor profile." There were 186 bottles in the US. This was just a US allocation.
This was more complex.
I think so too.
And they definitely got the tropical
It's not
fruit
all
going
those
on.
inches.
The grass on
Get rid of
all in
All
all,
Auchentoshan is
yeah,
triple distilled.
very
Yes.
accurate.
Oh, that buttered toast, I think, actually comes through, Paul.
It does.
I know it lost you, but I smell it. Oh, wow.
Great.
That's so good.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah, kind of.
Um, So think again, first fill. So this is first fill bourbon. The first one was a refill hogshead. So a second fill bourbon, hogshead, which is even larger. I'm not sure if this is a hogshead or not for first fill, but it doesn't say. But I'm kind of doubting it. If there were only 186 bottles, it's probably a regular size bourbon barrel.
I love this one.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is excellent. The nose is one of my favorites I think I've had.
This is a delicious whiskey, absolutely.
Good to see you, Rich. How you doing?
Good to be here.
Yes, I'm glad you're here.
Thanks.
Wonderful.
Yeah, this is
Wow.
one of those, you know.
This is, yeah.
I
this
get that
one
butter
is-
popcorn.
Charles,
Oh, yeah.
what was the ABV on that first one?
First one was 51.5.
Because to me, like the nose on that was just alcohol. And this one, I like this a lot better than the first one, actually.
Bananas on the nose now they added the water. It's very.
Politely disagree with I think the nose on the first one is really complex.
Yeah, I don't think it was that.
I mean, it's definitely a lighter nose on the first one. You know, it definitely has
Yeah.
maybe more citrus kind of notes on it too.
Yeah.
And that coconut water or whatever you want to call it, cream. And the second one is more like rich and that
Complex.
buttery note comes through.
I get the lime on the finish here.
Yeah, before you got into that buttered toast, one of the nose notes I had was pudding.
Mhm.
Yeah, I had the banana cream filling and a banana like a banana cream pie.
Yeah,
And
so
stuff, a little bit of graham cracker even too.
you're going to find more tropical notes, you know, when you have less copper or when you have more copper contact. So, you know, it's really removing a lot of those impurities that cause whiskey to have maybe more of a funkier kind of vibe, which we're going to find out here in the next 4 whiskeys. But I really wanted to start off with these Auchentoshan. I've actually been really dying to taste both of them. That first one, you know, I've just heard really great things about it. I had not tasted it before, so I was very excited to try that. And obviously, it's always wonderful to try a Scotch Malt Whiskey Society festival bottle. And the festival bottle wasn't too bad, I don't think. It was $185 plus tax and shipping and all that. So I had another $50 there, but you know, in a
Charles, I'm curious, what's the, is it predominance to stay away from copper? I mean, are there a lot of other distilleries out there that use copper stills as well, or no?
Well, so everybody uses copper stills. There's you have to use copper to actually distill the fermented mash, or excuse me, the wash. You know, copper is used, you know, for many reasons, like including those 3 that I mentioned. But you won't not see a copper still in Scotland.
I'm wondering why Auchentoshan stands out. And
well, because they're triple distilling. So you have to remember that there's an extra distillation happening, which is incredibly unusual. So when you're in Ireland and you're tasting Irish whiskeys in general, you know, people like Irish whiskey because it's lighter, it's fruitier, it's sweeter. You know, whether it's a blend or not, that triple distillation definitely makes a lighter spirit. And, you know, in Ireland, you have plenty of that. You know, there's plenty of 40% light Irish whiskey that, you know, it tastes great, but it's not that complex. It's very kind of light and fruity. And so triple distillation, not to say that that's a bad thing. It's actually a great thing, as we can tell tonight with these first two whiskeys, but it definitely takes away some of the impurities that you get in a lot of distilleries. Now, when you get up into the Speyside region, you're going to see both. You're not going to see triple distillation, but you're going to see both worm tubs and shell and tube condensers. And that, just that difference alone in how it's condensed makes a huge difference. And you're going to see that as we go along tonight.
Cool. Thanks.
Yep.
I mean, these are both outstanding. Tasted them side by side. I may like the mellowness of the first one a little better, but they're both terrific.
Yeah. I mean, they both have their place, right? You know,
what's the Scottish Malt Whisky Society? Is that a specific distiller, or is it?
No, so Scotch Malt Whisky Society, for people who are new, is an organization that was created back in the 70s, maybe even late 60s, by a group of guys who went up into, Speyside, actually. Glenn Farkless was their first barrel, but they bought a barrel and brought it back to Edinburgh, shared it with their friends, and then all of a sudden they thought they were onto something, and the organization grew. It's a membership organization. It's based in Scotland, but they have a US headquarters in New York City. They've got Asian headquarters in Singapore and Hong Kong. They're all over the world. They have 20,000 members, I think, at this point, around the world. And basically, all of their bottles have numbers on them. And this one is, so Auchentoshan is distillery number 5. So they were actually one of the earlier distilleries that they got barrels from. This one actually doesn't have a barrel number because it's one of their, they call it a rare release, but most of their bottles will have which cask number it is as well. But they source casks from all over the world, but you have to be a member in order to buy them. And typically they're, you know, it's a pricey endeavor. It's really great to have it with the club because we can all share it and try it without, you know, breaking the bank. So they're a great organization. We've actually had them come to Saratoga. The president, Tom Smith, he's become a good friend. And he's done presentations up here and all of that. So hopefully we get them back up here again soon. Any other questions on the first two? No. Okay. All right. So sorry for my reach.
You just picked that up, didn't you?
Oh, I knew it was there. At least my fly is up.
No one meant the same.
Good thing this is not recorded.
It's actually not, Charles. You got to check. It's actually not up. You
It's
should.
not?
Yeah, you should. Just kidding. I actually don't know.
I forgot I was wearing pants. Damn, I got too many people in the room.
Is this
All right.
COVID again?
Oh yeah, we're back to COVID. There's a lot of funk in this next one. I don't know what it is.
Okay.
All right, sorry, that's going too far. All right, we are going. We're going to Knockdhu. Some of you might have heard of Knockdhu. It's pretty interesting. They're an older distillery as well. They're up actually in the Speyside region. They were founded back in 1893 by John Morrison. But it's interesting. They kind of, you know, like all of these distilleries, open and close, open and close. They're pretty small, 2 stills, not a big operation. But in 1983, they closed again. They were sold to Inverhouse in 1988. They started making whiskey again in '89. And then they made various bottles most popular was a 12-year-old. There was also an annual one that was around 14, 15-year-old, a 16-year-old that was only in second fill bourbon, and then there was a 30-year-old. But in 1994, the whiskey actually changed its name. So no, 1994. Oh, sorry. The whiskey actually, did I say it 1894? Oh, no. In 1994, the whiskey actually changed its name to Anoch, and that is spelled A-N-C-N-O-C. You would think it would be Anknock, but it's Anoch in 1994. And the reason why they did that is because there's Knockdhu, which is another distillery. So they were trying to separate themselves. Knockdhu means the hill in Gaelic, but they're an interesting distillery. They're kind of one that you either like it or you don't. It's one of those love-hate kind of relationships. I went to a really great tasting at Julio's in Massachusetts, and one of the Taylor brothers, the Taylor brothers are now behind Found North, which is that great Canadian bottling. But the Taylor brothers represented Knockdhu or Anoch as one of their brands. And so I went to a really great tasting of a number of different Anoch bottles and really came to love what they were doing. This one, so their distillery number with the Scotch Malt Whiskey Society is number 115. So they're one of the later distilleries that they worked with. And let me pull up the notes on this one. Where is it? Is it in there? Huh. It is. Oh yeah, there is. Okay. All right. So 115.24. This is a second fill barrel. Second fill bourbon barrel. So go back to the first whiskey we had. That was a second fill bourbon hogshead barrel. This was 11 years old, 58.4%. I don't know why they don't have more notes on this. So it's tropically driven dram that flaunts honey, spice, and decadent desserts. I'm going to see if I can get more info. I thought I had it here.
Oh, yeah, anything, same for me.
So Knockdhu uses worm tubs. So now we're jumping to the worm tub family. So we went from probably the opposite end of the spectrum with triple distillation at Auchentoshan, and now we are going to double distillation with worm tubs as the condenser. And worm tubs, like we were talking before, are about the width of a bear hug. So very little copper contact. So when this spirit is coming off of the still as vapor and condensing back into liquid, it isn't touching the copper like it would be in a shell and tube condenser. So what that does is it actually adds more what we would call impurities into the whiskey, which would be maybe some sulfur kind of notes. I don't know about this yet. I haven't tasted or smelled this one yet. But it's going to be a thicker, oilier type of whiskey.
So as it condenses, does it fall back into the original, or does this one also continue on?
No, so when it goes through the worm tubs and its final condensation,
okay,
that's when it just goes into the holding tanks at that point.
Okay,
but it's flowing through those tubes a lot. It's not being shot through the very narrow.
Yep.
It's going through these big tubes, so not all of the spirit is touching contact or touching copper as it's going through all the time. So it definitely leads, and it creates a much different type of spirit. And this is a good example of that. So here's a list of some of the distilleries that use worm tubs. And you can kind of start to get a little bit of a commonality when you start thinking about some of these, but I don't know how many of you've had of these, but I'm going to just list them off. Balmenach, Benrinnes, which we're doing next, or no, in 2, we're doing Benrinnes in a little bit. Cragganmore, Craigellachie, we're doing that tonight. Dalwhinnie, Edradour, Glen Elgin, Glen Kinchy, which is a lowland, Knockdhu, which we're having right now, Mortlock, which is next, Oban, Old Pulteney, Royal Lochnagar, Speyburn, Springbank, Talisker, Ardnahoe, and Balindaloch. And there's another one I can't pronounce. I don't want to, I'm being recorded. Yeah. So I'm going to just read what Holly says about worm tubs here, because she's a big worm tub fan. And she talks about Oban, and I was with her when we climbed the hills to try and catch a peek of their worm tubs. They're actually on the top of their facility. They're not part of the tour or anything like that. So you have to climb up to the top of the hill overlooking Oban and try and peer down and see if you can see them. They're pretty hard to see. But she wrote, I hashtag worm tubs all the time on Instagram and wonder if anyone even knows what I'm talking about. I have climbed to the top of multiple hills within Oban to try and get a glance at their small worm tubs, a true hunter. It seems I have become some sort of a worm tub seeker, and with good reason. My single malt Scotch whiskey preferences tend to lean towards whiskeys that include a dash of every flavor, a bit of fruit, a dash of spice, malty, nutty qualities, a hint of smoke, and maybe even that dreaded word, sulfur. Although sulfur has become quite a broad term, it is best to take it with a grain of salt. Actually, I don't mind some salinity in my whiskey either. For me, sulfur means funk. This could present itself as a musty quality, a heavy old drank fruit, yeah, I guess heavy old drank fruit, a few dirty socks, or maybe you actually get an eggy taste. Where is this coming from? Sure, there could be something that went awry with the whiskey and maybe during maturation, but these are tried and true tasting notes of a handful of distilleries in Scotland. Many factors could play a role as well, including fermentation times, size and shape of pot stills, how long you run your distillation, cut points, etc. But it also can be how a distillery condenses that vapor back to a liquid during distillation. And then she goes back into the copper contact. All of this mean the more copper contact you have in a distillation process, typically, the more delicate and less sulfur forward style of whiskey you will make. As you look at the pictures, I already told you about this, so worm tubs and size of them, but yeah, and she lists the distillery. So, you know, the whole point of this tasting tonight, and it's all, Scotch is a journey. There's no question about it. You find some distilleries that you like, you find some flavor profiles that you like, and then you try and find more whiskeys within those flavor profiles because you like them, right? It's like anything. Nothing wrong with trying different things, and whether you like them or not, that's another point. But tonight, we're trying to identify maybe one particular taste note, one thing that, you know, all of these distilleries do it. So if you like it, great. Maybe try other distilleries that have worm tubs and see if maybe that component is that tying together, you know, character. So I don't know. It's just something else to think about when you're drinking Scotch, and there's so many ways you can go, whether it's barrels, like we heard about the long fermentations, all of that, makes a big difference.
Do I smell sherry? Is there any sherry in this barrel? It's all bourbon?
This is all bourbon.
There's a richness that.
This is, what do they say, second fill? Yeah, second fill ex-bourbon. Again, young, higher proof. You know, you could get, even just from the oak itself, some kind of darker notes, or you could even call it berry notes.
Charles, what is the proof on this one?
This one's 58.4.
Doesn't drink that, huh?
The sherry, did you catch that on the back?
On the nose
Oh.
and the palate. It may just be relative to the other two. This is heavier.
They're definitely heavier.
Funkier.
I don't get a ton of funk.
Uh-uh.
I get a little bit, but not a lot.
Right.
Not as much as I've had. Actually, some of Knox you can get a lot. Maybe because this is young and high proof, it's not coming through, which is possible. It could be hidden a little bit by that proof. The alcohol does tend to hide things sometimes.
It was kind of.
I get a lot of spice on this one, more than on the other ones.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree.
Spicy. Yeah.
and that would be, again, we're not talking triple distillation and, you know, which would remove some of that spice.
The second one of them had a ginger spice.
Yeah, there was a little ginger spice on that
It was
one.
noticeable.
I don't get a lot of complexity on the nose. It's kind of, it's drinkable. It's nice, you know, it's okay.
I'm not feeling an apple on the nose.
There's some apple there and it's.
Green
it's-
apple.
Right, that's what it was kind of like this tart,
Yes.
almost bitterness that I'm
Yeah.
getting to it. And
Or
that's
like- maybe like
actually
a
what it is.
Green
yeah.
melon.
Maybe a little melon.
So here's a little bit more. I did look at this earlier. So it's 2 stills. So it's a mix of the old and new. Washbacks are wooden, but it uses a lauter system with its mash tun, which is more of a newer style. So they're combining some of the new with the old, and then they use the worm tubs, which is old. The new make is heavily sulfury, which, you know, we're not getting a lot of that on this. You know, the wood has definitely played a role in changing that sulfur on this. So they do very little reflux in this with their stills.
That's why I like that Ben Nevis 6.
Okay, what does that mean? Very little reflux?
So I got a kid in the 70s.
So reflux, so little reflux is encouraged in the stills. Reflux is when the spirit tries to move up and out of the stills and it falls back into the still.
Okay. Yeah.
So, you know, depending on the shape of the still, sometimes they have these bulbs in the middle before the neck, and the bulb will actually capture some of that steam and the whiskey, and it will make it drop back in. Whereas if it was just a neck going straight up, the whiskey has a much easier time of just going straight up as vapor. But when you have that bulb in the middle, it kind of, it's like a roadblock, like a speed bump in a way. It takes it and it drops some of that back in.
But that allows more contact with copper. Is that the reason for the bulb?
Yeah, so they're at Mortlock, or excuse me, at Knockdhu, they're trying for little reflux. So again, you're getting more oil, you're getting more of that funk, that sulfur. You know, they're not trying to get reflux. Whereas at Auchentoshan they are. That's part of, you know, not only do they triple distilling, but they do encourage more reflux.
Okay.
Yes, makes it lighter.
All right, I got a funky question.
Uh-oh.
And Beth Ann is cringing as we speak. So maybe it's just me because I'm a strange dude, but occasionally I'll taste some of these things and I will have a color come to mind.
Okay.
I don't know if anybody else gets that. Maybe I'm just.
Anesthesia.
Okay, all right. So thank you. See? And now she's blushing. So I taste this one and immediately like a light brown color comes to mind.
I would
I don't
think
know why.
And I said light blue because I'm getting a lot of clean.
What about like the color of the couch, the orange?
Your couch or ours?
Yeah. No, the couch that I'm sitting on.
That's what you're getting, like you would say orange?
I thought that was blood.
It's blood? Oh, it's blood orange?
Blood orange.
All right, I don't know. No, I could see that. All right, light brown, light blue. I'm sure we can all, you know, take another hit and be with all sorts of colors, but.
A hit of the whiskey, right?
Yes.
I just feel like so folks may not know I'm actually a psychologist, and this is not an uncommon thing. No, I'm not gonna like diagnose you or anything.
I can
not an
do
uncommon thing, but it's something we should expect actually while we're tasting these things and we're trying to access what does this taste like to me. You should be sparking memories of all sorts of different senses potentially, but some of them are getting inhibited and we're like, oh, don't pay attention to that. But if you open yourself up to it, you may get different things like colors or even like, oh, this sort of feels like a certain type of song even, or all sorts of stuff. So
Yeah, I'm a very open person.
yeah. Good to know.
I'm not paying you a copay for this.
This one's free, but you know, no more free ones.
Personal therapy.
You can, we're gonna do a cheddar up for Luke. You know, if you guys need any online after our tasting therapy. Yeah.
If you pay me in whiskey, I'll be very happy.
All right, we'll think about that. Okay, all right. So we're now to number 4. Let me show you my pants again. All right, so we are to Mortlock. This is in one of those beautiful perfume bottles. So this is like the top of the line Signatory when you see these nice looking bottles here. So let me read a little bit about Mortlock. So they're also in the Space side. They're owned by Diageo. Some of you might remember Game of Thrones has their Mortlock edition. There's a whole new range of Mortlock out now, and it's actually pretty common to see in bars. I know Nine Maple has them all right now. But Mortlock is actually one of those distilleries that I first ever had an independent bottling from. And it actually happens to be a bottle we have in the shop right now. It's a Gordon MacPhail 15-year Mortlock that was a sherry cask expression that's very good.
I have that.
Yeah, that's a really good one.
Very
So
good. It's amazing.
yeah, so I bought that actually in Scotland when I first went over in 2015, and I've always been a Mortlock fan ever since. But here, hold on, guys.
New leather.
Hold on, guys. Let me talk about Mortlock first. All right, so they're founded very old, 1823. They are a key component in quite a few of Johnny Walker bottles. And let's see here. Yeah, so this bottle is a first fill bourbon. So we're jumping back to first fill again. So we went second fill, first fill, second fill, first fill. All bourbon so far. This is 58.3%. Only 231 bottles. 11 years old.
Some smoke too.
See what we get on this one.
It's so weird. How could you not smell that all
So
the
there's a
first
little
time?
smoky, yeah. Kind of.
I thought it was a little
Smells like
earthy.
he's right there.
Yeah.
It's the last thing I taste.
Earthy meaning funky or?
No, no, not funky. Not well. Maybe it's on the the very mild scale of funky, but no.
I get barbecued meat on the nose.
Yes.
Interesting.
I get even like some leather on the nose.
Yeah.
New leather is what I said. Very new leather.
Yeah.
What was the ABV in this, Charles, again?
58.3.
What they really mean is like that kind of
It's very
damp,
meaty.
earthy.
Yeah, it's meaty. The leather definitely.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, like when you just smell a new leather.
So
Not
Very,
baseness,
very
it says here,
Brand new.
Mortlock's main claim to fame, production-wise, is as the home of the most fiendishly complex distillation regime in Scotland.
Prove it.
That's quite a claim.
So, yeah. The wash, so the wash, which comes out from the long fermentation that they do, is split between 3 wash stills. And they work in tandem. The low wines, however, are split into 2 parts. The first 80% is collected as charge for spirit still number 2. The remaining 20% forms the charge for spirit still number 1. They each have names. The first one's called the Weak Faints. The second one's called the Wee Witchy. This distills the Weak Faints 3 times with only the heart of the final run being collected. I mean, talk about complex. It all adds up to the new make spirit having been distilled 2.81 times. In addition to this, all the stills are run relatively speedily with no air rests to rejuvenate the copper, and all line arms, which is the top part of the neck where it goes to the condenser. So once you get up to the top of the neck, then you have what's called a line arm. And depending on the direction of the line arm, whether it's pointing down or horizontal or pointing up, can make a difference too. Because if it's pointing up, that tends to have more reflux again. It's going to come back and fall back into the still. If it's horizontal, that's, you know, the midway. If it's going down, that makes it actually a little bit easier, or actually a little harder for the spirit to get over the hump. So there's a lot of different reasons. The result of this complex, okay, so in addition, all the stills are run relatively speedily. So again, less copper contact, no air rest to rejuvenate the copper, and all line arms running into the cold worm tubs. The result of this complex regime in a copper-starved environment is a building up of sulfur and meatiness. There's your meat in the new make spirit, with the dud runs of the wee witchy providing an extra meaty boost.
That's funny. Meatiness was my big reaction to this on the palate.
Okay, so this is interesting. It says next, while other meaty spirits are made, most notably Benrinnes, which we're having next, and Daluane, which we're not having, none have Mortlock's weight, meaning that this is a highly prized base note for blends. As a result, there has been little stock available for single malt bottlings, bar the occasional independent bottlings. Well, that's changed now. Mortlock has a lot more bottlings out right now. So lots of interesting stuff there. Again, this is all part of that evolution of learning about how this stuff is made, and all of these different distilleries, and I think it's a lot of fun.
What's throwing me off with this one, but I loved it, was that I guess that meatiness that everyone was talking about, to me almost came across like almost like the Barney notes you get from like a goat cheese.
No.
No, I don't know if that's weird. It's probably.
Where?
That's pretty weird, Jeff.
But where on it? Where did he say he tasted those?
Where did you taste that?
Early, mid, palate? I mean, the.
Oh, where on your palate?
Yeah.
Saying to me, definitely the mid palate. So not up front. It's like back of the tongue, but not in the finish.
Right.
I mean, I think it's the meatiness that you guys are talking about, but the first thing that came to my mind was like almost like when you eat like a goat cheese, almost like that barn.
Get it.
Look at a good way.
Yeah, you get that like from an organic egg sometimes, that same kind of barn sort of flavor.
Gaminess.
Charles, do you have this in the shop?
Yep.
And what's the price on this?
118, I think.
118 or something?
Yeah,
I don't know.
150.
115.
Maybe feel like kind of full meal.
Less tax. And gratuity.
Yeah. Yeah, we have some of all of these, but not a lot. There's a few, but
They get Knockdhu in the shop.
no, none of the Scotch Malt Whiskey Society ones.
I was
Sorry.
gonna knock you out.
All right, and
That's
That would be a good Scotch Malt Whiskey Society bottle.
There you go. Yes.
What do you think, Charles?
Good.
Yeah.
Fabulous.
It would be.
Yeah.
For us older folk anyway.
Yes.
You and your
Geriatric
wheel
money.
of fortune.
Oh yeah.
All right, so we good with Mortlock? We want to keep moving on? Yeah.
I would like to see people's faces on the Zoom as they taste the Benrinnes for the first time.
Okay, now we are going to Benrinnes. And we are going to another independent baller called Distiller's Art. I was first actually introduced to Distiller's Art in Boston. Holly was doing a tasting for Gordon's. This is a long time ago. And I happened to be out there, and I had a Bunnahabhain 28-year Distiller's Art, I think it was. Oh my God.
Wow.
One of the best bottles of whiskey I've ever had. And I bought one actually for the club. It was a $300 plus bottle. But from that point on, Distiller's Art, whenever I saw a bottle from them, I was always piqued my interest. You know, that's kind of how these things work, right? You have a really great experience and then you think everything's going to be great. So doesn't always work, but so Benrinnes, let's see here. That's not going to give us much. Let me give you some info on Benrinnes here.
This one I think is hot on.
So they're in Aberlour. So also Speyside. So very old, 1826, still active. They also employ a partial triple distillation process until 2007, and then they stopped that. That's kind of interesting. I didn't know that until I was just reading that right now. They were sold back in the day to John Dewars. In 74, they changed distillation process to, that's when they changed it to a triple distillation, partial triple distillation. And then they stopped distilling its own malt in 1984. And then they abandoned triple distillation in 2007, and they switched to the common 2-wash still and 4-spirit still. Let's see here. So they don't do a ton of their own releases. They do a 15-year-old semi-official bottling of the Flora and Fauna range, which is a special thing here. But so they're located on the lower slopes of Speyside Sentinel Mountain, which is called the Bend, in another of those intriguing distilleries, which produces a highly individual make due to its demand by blenders, but it's not ever become a really full-blown single malt producer. 6 stills, which I said, partial, okay, blah, blah, blah. Everything is run through worm tubs, which are kept very cold, adding weight and meatiness to the spirit. Yeah, so they're a Diageo company as well. They also make a Stronach. And where did I see Stronach recently? Did we get one?
This is funky.
I don't know. I can't remember now, but Stronach is something that I saw. But all right, so let's get back to this bottle. Only 7 years old. This one's pretty high up there, 60.7%. Refill hogshead again. So look at the super light color.
Okay.
That, I mean, you're not, that is definitely not a first fill anything. That is refill.
Yeah.
You know, this is like almost like new make.
Yep.
You know, what they're trying to do with this is find that perfect timing to get maybe a good taste of what new make should, like what the distillery is producing with the least amount of oak influence that you can get, but with a little bit of bourbon influence, you know. So this is a bigger bourbon barrel, hogshead.
Oh yeah, I just added 3 or 4 drops of water to it.
Charles, you said 7-year or an 11-year?
Very.
This is, oh, sorry, this is 7-year. This is 7-year. The Mortlock was 11 years.
When you taste it,
The younger they are, the buttier,
The Benrinnes is a 7-year.
Yeah.
This one really does well with water, Charles. Just
Really?
Yeah.
So this one does, I guess, very well with water.
the nose is way.
It changes the nose of it
The
too.
nose is completely changed in my opinion.
Yeah,
It goes from a
right?
funky to a floral.
Oh, funky. Okay, well, I got saltwater taffy on the nose at
Yes.
first.
Yeah.
Really?
What do you think, Rich?
I get like weak tea and funk on the nose, and that kind of carries through to the palate. I haven't added any water yet.
I had briny and salty.
The water totally opens this one
Yeah.
up. It's one of those ones where a lot of times you add a couple of drops of water, it
There's a
doesn't
little
change
bit
it
of
a lot.
sweetness,
This one it
right?
changes a lot.
Was that?
A little bit of sweetness.
Yeah. Oh
on the
yeah. There's a
nose.
little sweet.
That's why I said saltwater taffy.
I got cereal on the nose.
After water.
After water, the cereal is coming through.
Gotta clean those glasses up.
It's a little more floral too.
My kids put Cheerios in my drink cans too.
What I just.
I'll second Rich's green tea, black tea,
Yeah.
tea.
Oh, for sure.
I got tea on the
herbal.
number 3.
Yeah, tea is
The Knockdhu.
definitely there.
I think I'm missing a T.
See, this is the one I like the least.
Is it
It's
on the
already
nose
almost
or
done. That's
palate?
weird how that works.
Nose.
It's because it's
The T
took a
is.
lot of.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
like-
I agree,
Exactly,
John.
more
Very
dissect.
oily, super oily.
Oily and spicy.
Get it on the nose, not on the.
And look how slow it drops. You know,
Yeah.
it clings big time. Big legs.
Usually the young stuff they hide with cask.
Sometimes, you know, they don't want to, you want the new make to come
Yeah,
through,
definitely.
you know,
I respect
and,
that.
you know, it's interesting because there are some distilleries that are talked about in the whiskey circles about having really bad new make.
Yeah.
And then there are some that have great new make. I was at Beaumont with a group back in 2017, I think it was. And Rob, who's in the club, at one point in the tour, you get to go into like the manager's office and they have a bottle of new make and you have a lanyard around your neck with a little Glencairn attached to it, and they just start pouring the new make into your Glencairn. It's a mini Glencairn. And Rob was like over and over again, more. He loved it. He was like, this is the best new make I've ever had. I mean, we're talking like 68, 70%, you know, way up there.
Yeah, the new makes
There he is on the coast.
Yeah, so Rob is now floating away somewhere in the Isla Sea. But, you know, that's really, I mean, and I thought it was very good too. You got to be careful with that, obviously. It's super potent. But the knock on new make has always been at Springbank, of all things. You know, everybody loves Springbank. I mean, people are crazy about Springbank, and I love Springbank myself. However, when I was at the Artisan restaurant in Wishaw a number of years ago, we were talking about new make, and Derek, who's the owner there, and he has a collection of like almost 3,000 bottles that are open for tasting. He was talking about the new make at Springbank and how people in the industry think it's horrible, and he thought so too. However, they're so good with maturation and the use of their casks that they can mask whatever unpleasantness that the new make to them produces. So I went to Springbank after that visit, and I was going to be very critical of the new make, you know, because I had heard it was so horrible, and I didn't remember it from the time before. And so I tasted it, and I don't know, it seemed okay to me, but I don't know these things. But it's interesting, you know, maybe Distillers Art wanted you to taste Benrinnes for what Benrinnes really is, right? And this light influence of the bourbon hogshead in a second fill situation gives it enough, you know, to kind of coat it lightly, but you're still having a 60% new make, basically. 7 years is 7 years, though. That's quite a bit of time.
Wouldn't want to be in prison for 7 years.
All right, so that was one to kind of, again, you know, I remember looking at the color of this bottle and going, oh, this would be fun. You know, let's try and take different worm tub distilleries and see what differences there could be. Now, you know, we haven't had one yet that's really funky. I mean, there's been light funk, but we haven't had one of those traditional really funky bottles yet. And I don't know, maybe Craigellachie has some funk to it. It smells like it might, but not as much as some of the other ones that I've had before. But
I had that.
all right.
6 years.
This does smell.
So we're gonna go to Craigellachie.
I'm getting some sulfur.
So this is the only one that we're doing tonight that is aged actually in a or finished in a non-bourbon barrel. And I kind of did that on purpose, just because, you know, you always have to throw in something different. But Craigellachie also in the Speyside region, we've had a lot of Craigellachie. You know, Holly represented them for many years, so we went through a lot of Craigellachie in our whiskey club days, but classic Speyside distillery right in the heart of the Speyside. Let me pull up some notes here.
Yeah, Band-Aid.
Latex.
Yeah, exactly, latex, classic latex.
John, take it easy on the latex. This is a tasting.
Well, and Charles, I actually came off mute because I want to say it's interesting that this has not gotten any bourbon barrel, because this is by far the darkest of the whiskeys we're tasting tonight.
Well, so this started in a sherry hogshead, so a very large sherry barrel, and then it was finished in a first fill tawny port barrel. So we're going in a whole different direction. What's that? Tawny. Yeah. So whole different direction on this one, right?
Did it spend any time in latex gloves?
I think it had a little bit of time with the Michelin man, maybe, you know, in his gut, but
I brought it here.
oh yeah, Morris was there for that new make. You remember that, right?
I do. Have to agree with the latex. Sorry.
It's not as much.
So this one's only 50%. So it's yeah. So Murray McDavid, you know, what they're really good at is finding great barrels and then finishing them somehow. But then they're pretty consistent with their ABVs too. They're not doing a lot of cash strength offerings. So a lot of their bottles, that the few that we still have left, are all either 50%, or some are, I think, are 48%, but none of them are going to be 60% or anything like that. So it's kind of a nice way to end the tasting with a little bit of a lighter break on the palate. But I mean, the sherry notes and the port notes do come through. They do cover maybe some of the funk that you get with Craigellachie. And this is 12 years old.
It's a year less than 13.
Yeah. But not like.
Oh, did you?
Schmidt's phenolic.
Yeah.
I think they're calling it latex, but phenolic.
Yeah.
Nail polish remover.
No. I mean, so again, some of these distilleries have a certain flavor profile, right? So Craigellachie has always had a funk. If you try their 13-year-old, which is probably their biggest core range seller, and then they have their 17-year, but their 13 years, like the classic, it's like the best expression of Craigellachie, because it's truly what the distillery wants you to taste. So you get that funk, but it's not for everyone. Again, this is all a journey. You know, for Holly, it's like one of her favorite distilleries of all time. So, you know, take that with what you will. Right.
Charles, you may have said this, but did it say how long it was finished in the tawny port?
It probably, yeah, it does. I'll tell you that right here. So 15 months.
15 months, okay.
Which is quite a long time.
Yeah.
So here's what they did. They took 3 casks of 11-year-old Craigellachie and matured it in the spirit specially selected tawny port from the Caves de Mursa, our winemaking partners in Portugal. After 15 months, the time had come to share this transformed Speysider. So the notes that they have: the nose, deep malt, floral fruitiness, nuts. Palate, lush winter fruits, toffee nut brittle. The finish, hint of chocolate, sweet oak spice.
You get the chocolate. There's no floral on that nose. I like it.
Do you have tasting notes for the Benrinnes?
I don't think so. No, there's none on there, I don't think.
No worries.
No, I could probably look it up.
That's fine. Curious.
So you guys learned something tonight, a little bit? I mean, that's kind of what it's all about, you know?
That Mortlock is brown.
We all learned that Mortlock is light brown.
Or orange.
And
Or light blue.
that John likes latex.
First of all, Luke said I'm fine, so I'm going with.
Yeah, he's good. He's fine. He passed the test.
This is a.
We all need to set up appointments with Luke.
Some more than others.
6-month
one of
wait
us?
list, unless
Which
it's a
one?
single barrel.
Yeah, you can do a therapy session at my house, Luke.
The last 4 were
Yeah,
all
no,
worms
no,
up, right?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
I think you ordered them really good because I think it went from. it felt
Hey,
like
Luke.
like mild.
If you're looking for a couch, there's one at Charles' shop.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Oh, nice. It's a nice gradient.
I've actually recovered a fair amount from crises on that couch. I'm familiar with it.
Yeah.
One time I came from a blood donation appointment. I was almost dying, and Holly gave me water on that couch. Probably saved my life.
Charles, can we get a nice chair next to that couch for Luke?
Yeah, I was thinking he could sit in the other room. We could talk through the wall. I don't know if I could look at him. That's the problem.
Wait. Is this like confession? Is this what we're trying to do?
Yeah, right. I mean, maybe we need more of a priest. I don't know if I can. I can't help that much.
Charles, what's the price on this last one we had?
A little harsh on the pen.
That one I think is
I went back to it. It's
a
not.
smidge over $100, like 124 or something like that. You know, typically, this is something for the newbies who are here. Say, hold that down a little bit. When you're out shopping for single cask whiskey, so whether it's an independent bottler or maybe the distillery is releasing a single barrel or whatever, in the Scotch world, the best gauge, and Single Cask Nation does this, but think about it, it's about $10 a year. That's kind of where you want to stick. You know, if you find a bottle that's in that $10 a year range, you're in pretty good shape. If you're finding a 12-year-old single cask that's going for $300, maybe it's a Macallan or something like that. That's why. It's because it's a Macallan. But a 10-year-old or a 12-year-old single cask should cost from an independent baller between $100 and say $140. I wouldn't go much more than that. So, you know, we have a special Lafroig that's like double that, but you know, there are certain distilleries that's very hard to get an independent bottling from.
So a 12-year at $39.99 is suspect.
Well, no, that wouldn't be a single barrel though. That would, or a single cask. I mean,
You know.
you can get plenty of 12-year-old single malt Scotch for $50, but you know, that's a blend of many barrels, not a single barrel at cask strength. So that's kind of a good rule of thumb. Not in the bourbon world, not in the Irish world, but in the Scotch world. You know, think about it, years and price that way. When it comes to independent bottlings, especially.
Can you get your hands on independent flyer?
No, it's not in the US right now.
So good.
Yeah.
They do a really good job.
We did an independent flyer, Craigellachie,
Infrequent flyer. Yeah.
or infrequent flyer,
Yeah, yeah.
Craigellachie 13-year one year. It was actually kind of weird. It was like Craigellachie at its funkiest or craziest, whatever you want to call it. But
I think the best about
all right, guys, I'm glad we just did 6 tonight. I think 7 would have been actually too much. It's I've been trying to like figure out what's the right, you know, when we started this club, we were doing 4. And they were bigger pours, but it was just 4, and we've done them with 8, and we've actually I think done 9 at one point.
It was 12.
And your palate is just shot. You know, it's just really hard to pick up those notes
The Japanese.
by that point. But I hope you enjoyed tonight. I'm going to stop the recording, but I'm going to stay on with you all. If you guys want to hang out, that's fine.
I have to tell you, I think your strategy of starting with the Auchentoshan's was actually a really good one, because I've had the same experience you talked about. Was by the end, if I've saved them and tried them the next day, they're really much better than I remember them being at the end of an evening.
Yeah, no, it's totally true. And
Totally agree.
That was, yes, very good.
and it's important to start with maybe what are maybe the most special. I mean, again, I haven't tried these, so
Yeah.
it's all kind of a shot in the dark a little bit, but you know, it's good to get those in early or earlier than later. So
Well, not only are they.
all right, I'm gonna stop the recording, but
bottles, but they're also